I want to congratulate Jennfer Simone. Her article about the effective strategies to recover from trauma was recently published in Authority magazine. Jennfer Simone had her life turned upside down with the loss of her parents after a long battle with trauma, depression, and anxiety. Jennfer is now thriving. She works for a top financial company. Jennfer, it sounds like you were very close to your father, and he died unexpectedly at a relatively young age. You were in your 20s when that happened. What was the immediate result of that loss for you?
Well, it was very, very sudden and very traumatic. It's sort of when it first happened, I sort of went like numb. And then it took me a little bit to kind of like really realize what was happening. And then, that's when the depression and the anxiety really started to sink in.
Okay. And then 4 years later, which isn't very long, your mom died in your presence, and you say that that experience haunted you. In what way did it haunt you?
Well, it was very literal. When, my mom was down visiting me, helping me move, and I was moving into a new place, and she actually passed away right in front of me. She basically dropped dead on the floor, cardiac arrest. We had finished, moving my stuff for the day, and she was just like sitting on the floor. And all of a sudden, I see that she's on the floor laying down. Um, and I was just like panicked. I didn't know what to do. I was certified in CPR, so I started performing CPR. I knocked on my brand new neighbor's door, who I've never met before. Um, and I was like, please call 911. We have an emergency here, like get an ambulance. Um, I kept performing CPR. It didn't work. The EMTs got there. They did the same thing. They gave her some kind of like injection, and then they eventually took her to the hospital. And then, I was just like sitting in the little family waiting room, and a nurse came in and sort of prepared me and said, it's not looking good. So I was faced with some immediate decisions. They were like, look, like, we don't think she's going to make it. They wanted me to figure out what, like, if I wanted to donate her organs.
Oh,
um
good.
lot of information and a lot of things happening very quickly.
Wow, just pow, 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 pow.
Yeah.
So it's so traumatic to have someone you love die in front of you and then to be working on her because you knew CPR and not get a response and then have to make such huge decisions.
Mhm.
I'm so sorry that that was your experience.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'm glad you shared the years it took to thoroughly grieve. Grieving is a different process for everyone, but it is a process.
Hmm.
You suffered traumas other than the deaths of your parents. Are you comfortable sharing about them?
Sure. Yeah, I experienced in my early 20s, I was sexually assaulted. I was roofied when I went out with who I thought was a friend. And he tried to take advantage of me. I thankfully fought him off and went home. That was a pretty traumatic experience, and it's definitely shaped, my future relationships and lack thereof with men. And just other traumatic things have happened along the way. Like I've lost, friends, just because of it. Like it's sort of a direct correlation between my depression and not knowing how to cope with that, and being a depressed and anxious person and not knowing how to like also be a good friend.
Yeah.
So I've lost friends, I've lost like jobs over this. So there's been sort of like a list of traumatic things in addition to losing my parents. Yes.
Well, and when you're depressed and chronically anxious, it's hard to cope with friends, or, it's hard to be
Mhm.
upbeat. And what symptoms convinced you that you needed professional help?
Well, I guess I sort of realized at the beginning of it, I sort of tried to lean on my friends for support, and while they were supportive, at the same time, they're not professionals and they had not gone through the same things that I've been through. So it was difficult to lay all of that on them.
Right.
And I got to a point where I didn't want to, get out of bed. I didn't want to go outside. I was just like anxious. Like I would go to, a store or something like that, and I would have a panic attack and have to get out of there. Like
Yeah.
it was just bad. And thankfully I found my doctor, and I first started with my primary care doctor, which helped a little bit. But then the severity of my depression and anxiety really needed, the specialist help of an actual psychiatrist. So that's when I found, Dr. Knight and my the practice that I'm at with now.
You mentioned how much you have derived help from deep transcranial magnetic stimulation. I
Yes,
had never heard of that treatment before. Can you describe what it is?
sure. So the TMS therapy is a non-invasive therapy. It's a little bit different. It's usually used in addition to medication and, obviously talk therapy. What it is it's this helmet, like you literally put this like helmet on your head, and it uses magnets, sort of like an MRI, but not as intense as an MRI. And it doesn't hurt. It and they sort of do this like map of your brain, and you sit there, you literally just sit there in a chair for 20 minutes, and you sit there and the magnets do this like stimulation of your brain, and it works on the area of the brain that is affected by depression. So what it does is it tries to rewire the brain and get it and sort of revert it back to before you were depressed.
Okay.
Um, so it's a really full treatment. It is a little time consuming, in the sense that the sessions are only 20 minutes, but you do need to do 36 of them, um, which is fine because I was on a break from work. So I was able to do that. But since they're only 20 minutes, it is definitely something that's feasible for anybody to do, at any time during the day.
And do you understand why it helps?
I do a little bit. I think that it produces serotonin in your brain. So I think that it just wakes up that part of the brain that's been sort of like dormant from the depression.
Okay. I appreciate that you recommend being social when you are ready. Because
Hmm.
forcing oneself to be social when you're not ready is miserable. Yet you also shared about times when you did force yourself to go out when you really didn't feel like it. How do you know when you're ready?
Well, I think there's a fine line between knowing like, okay, I'm not ready, but then you can only stay in the house for so long. I think,
Uh,
avoid people for so long. And sometimes it would get to the point where I would make plans with people, and then I would cancel at the last minute, which is totally not cool as a friend. I know that that's not right. But I think that you just know, and it's not so much that I forced myself to get out, it's just that I knew it would be good for me.
Okay.
I think you just need to listen to your body, and you need to know, the grieving process is different for everyone, and it's an ongoing thing. Like, to this day, I'm still grieving. It's something that doesn't go away, unfortunately.
Right.
And I think that you have to sort of, accept the past, and sort of, just honor that past, and know it's okay to be happy in the present moment, and it's okay to move on with your life while also, remembering what happened to you in the past.
So it's not a dishonor to your parents to be happy today.
Correct.
They would want you to be happy.
Yeah.
I love that you feel like a superhero. Would you tell us about that feeling?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of a feeling that, unfortunately, I went through these things at a young age. And part of the big problem was, none of my peers, being when I lost my dad, I was 26. And not many of my peers have been in that era yet of like losing their parent.
Right.
So I felt very alone. And now that I'm 40, I'm going to be 41 in a couple weeks. Unfortunately, we are getting to that age of, my peers losing their parents. And, it helps in the sense that I've been through it, so I can definitely be there for my friends. And, it I just remind myself, like, if I want to do something and I'm scared about it, I kind of just say to myself, like, Jen, like, you've been through so many like horrible things. Like, you can do anything, like, and I'm still here, you know.
Uh-huh.
So I feel sort of, like, in not invincible, but, if I ever question myself, that if I'm like, well, I'm scared to do something, I'm like, look at all the things I've been through and have accomplished, and I'm still here, and I'm okay. And you know what I mean? So that's kind of how I feel like a superhero.
I think that's really a fun way to think of yourself. I wonder if you tell us what your cat, Kai, does
Yeah.
for your mental health.
Oh, Kai's wonderful. He's my buddy. Previous So Kai I've had for a year. Previous to him, I had a dog, a little Shih Tzu. We called him Puppy. And he unfortunately passed away in 2022, I believe. He was 17 years old, and that dog was just like my constant through everything.
Mhm.
He was there for me for both of my parents, losing my grandmom, like everything. Like, that dog was like my constant. And, that was another loss I had to get over. It was hard, having a pet for 17 years. And
Right.
then, he passed away. He had a stroke at the end, and he passed. And that was another like little grieving process in itself,
Right.
where, I grieved for him. And now when I was ready, I was like, okay, I think I could have a pet again. So that's where Kai came in. And Kai is my buddy. He is such a cuddler. He's kind of funny because he's a cat, but he likes to play fetch.
Uh,
So he's really funny. And he's right over here. He's my buddy. He cuddles with me every night. He loves to read with me, and he just really helps me feel not alone.
I love their pets, are such a valuable asset to our mental well-being.
Absolutely.
I want to wish you a happy birthday in a
Oh,
couple.
thank you.
And thank you for spending this time with me today. I recommend that the viewers who are watching read the entire article on Authority Magazine titled Strategies for Rebuilding Life After Trauma with Jennfer Simone. You can reach her on Instagram with the @ donkey biter, which is a weird name for.
I can explain that. If you have time, I can explain that. The reason that's my name, I went to Ireland. The first time I went to Ireland, I was bitten by a donkey, and it just sort of like came from that, like donkey biter. Like it just came from that. It was one of the funniest things that's ever happened to me.
Well, I knew there had to be a story behind that name.
Yeah.
And I'm wishing you the very best in the future. And thank you again for sharing what you've learned, Jennfer.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Nancy.
Bye bye.
All right. Bye bye.